today I want to share with you the strategies to write the interpretive essay, and also you will get to know what is an interpretive essay. At the end of the presentation, I'll assign you some homework which you have to complete by Monday. Okay, that homework is about the same essay. So in fact, I want you to be well prepared to write this essay. So after that homework on Monday, after you share your responses with me on Monday, then I will also explain to you the specific requirements for this particular assignment. Okay, you need some training to write this essay. You cannot. Well, I know that you are really good at writing stuff, but I just want you to get prepared for writing an interpretive essay for a literary piece. Okay, for a literary piece of writing. So we would need some practice in the next week for that, and I will help you with that practice. Okay, so let's begin today's lesson, writing an interpretive essay. Now, basically, when a teacher asks you to write an interpretative essay on a particular literary text, what your teacher wants you to do is to present your own interpretation of that particular literary piece. We have been discussing in various classes some extracts of poetry, extracts of short story, one-act play, extracts of a drama. What we have been doing throughout, that was what we call explanation. We were trying to explain for ourselves what different things mean in all those texts, or what all those different elements mean for us. Sometimes we call that explanation analysis. All right, so that was an analysis that we were doing. But now I'm asking you to start thinking about interpretation. In terms of complexity, interpretation, therefore, is a little higher level assignment. It requires more critical thinking. It requires a better understanding of the literary text which I assign you to interpret. So interpretation, therefore, is your point of view about the text in such a manner that you are able to support that point of view with the help of the contents of the literary piece about which you are giving your interpretation. Now, these are the things you take care of when you write an interpretive essay. First thing is themes. Where do themes come from? You know some of the themes in some of the works that we dealt with in our classes. I shared some of the lectures with you as well. Now, when we try to extract a theme from a text, this is how we do it. Basically, we analyze the literary elements in that particular text. We look for a character or a plot or a symbol or the setting. If we are treating with a novel, extract of a novel, a short story, or a play, or a one-act play. On the other hand, if we are dealing with poetry, then things are a little different, because the literary elements in poetry are a little different. You might recall the meter, rhyme, there are some additional different elements in case of poetry. But in case of drama or novel, the literary elements we have are character, plot, symbols, and settings. Now, what I was telling you was that we draw the themes from a literary text with the help of the literary elements that we find in that. And themes is the first component that we need to have in order to write our interpretative essay. What we will do with themes, I'll tell you later. But for the time being, where the themes come from. I want you to recall Andrea's Mother, the one-act play we read in the last class. Now, you might recall that we discussed one particular symbol from the play. Anybody would like to name that symbol? What was the symbol present on the stage? And we analyzed it.
Balloon.
Very good.
Balloon.
Yes. And what did balloon stand for?
Soul.
Balloon stood for what?
Soul.
Point to ponder.
Say it again.
Soul.
No, anybody else?
I think it represented letting go.
Letting
because
go. Excellent.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that is a nice way to put it. It represents letting go. Yeah. Any other? Soul. Amna Gani has put it over here like this, that it represents soul that will fly one day. Okay, good. Yeah. And you know, kind of extending what you both said, one can also say that it represents the transience of life, you know, transitoriness of life, that life is temporary, that the temporality of life, that life will leave us one day, and therefore we should be contented with death because it has to take place. So maybe one was trying to hold on to the departed soul, but you cannot do that. So leaving the symbol, letting it go, leaving the balloon, letting the balloon go implies that one has consciously and purposefully and willingly agreed to the fact that the soul has departed, and therefore we have to accept the fact of death of our dear one. So now, keeping that in mind, this letting go symbol or transience of life, transitoriness of life, keeping that in mind, one can safely say that one important theme in this particular play is the theme of transience of life, transitoriness of life, absoluteness of death. Or we can also say that one of the themes in the play is about accepting the death. All right. Now, another element that we discussed briefly in previous class was the character. If you focus on the character of Andrea's mother, you might recall that there was something about that character in her silence, which could help us say more about the play. Anyone among you who would like to say something more about the silence of the mother? Yes, any opinion about that?
Sir, I guess because of, she was kind of ashamed of what happened, like her, कौन था सर वो जो एड से मर गया था, so I guess
So
she didn't say anything because she was kind of ashamed of something.
She was what?
Ashamed.
She was grieving.
Ashamed.
She was in pain. Okay. And she was grieving. Okay. No, that of course is one thing.
Trauma.
She was in trauma, of course, of the death of her son.
She was shocked.
She was shocked. Okay. And that might result in the silence. But
Yes.
if you notice the long speech, in fact speeches by other characters, you might notice that they were also implying that the mother was guilt ridden. She had some guilt about the way she had treated her son. Over and over there are references to the fact that the son had a certain inclination in terms of relationship, and the mother was never open about that inclination. She was not ready to accept that inclination as a fact, and therefore she never encouraged her son to live his own life in his own way. Eventually he dies. Of course he dies for some other reason, but she remains the symbol of oppressiveness, and the word oppressiveness is used in the play as well. So that way one can safely argue that one of the themes of the play is mother's guilt, or guilt in general. And guilt is a very common theme in many other plays. There is a reference to Hamlet, for example, in the play. Shakespeare's Hamlet is also largely about guilt. Guilt is a theme. Okay, so I'm just giving you indication that this is how the elements in a literary text produce themes, or in other words, we draw themes with the help of the elements in a piece of literature. That is why I have been telling you that you have to identify the literary elements in a piece of literature to be able to analyze it. But once you have done the analysis part, then you move a step ahead. You move further and you try to draw themes out of those symbols. And I just named 2 themes, in this particular play. Okay. All right. So Isha is saying she never accepted her son. Yeah. Sense of shame. Yeah, probably if you use the word shame, then you have to justify it accordingly. Okay. But there was the relationship between the mother and the son was a troubled one. Okay. All right. So in the process of writing your interpretive essay, the first step for you is to identify the themes in the text with the help of the literary elements in the play or in the novel or in any literary text. Now we come to the second step of writing your interpretive essay. Of course, while you are starting to write your interpretive essay, you are initially developing an outline for that. Okay, and while you are reading that play that I assign you to interpret, or when you are reading that short story which I'm asking you to interpret, first you will read that, and after having read it, then you will prepare your notes for yourself. And in those notes, the first thing you have to take down while reading that particular literary piece is the themes, all the themes that you come across with the help of the literary elements in that particular piece. So that after you have done that, you have written down the themes, important themes that you identify in that particular text, then you need to think about the thesis statement in that particular text. This is the second step of writing your interpretive essay. So now the idea is regarding the thesis statement, that do not think of the literary text in terms of its summary when you are writing an interpretive essay. By summary means you start telling what happens in that particular play or in that particular story, the contents. We don't focus on the contents, we don't focus on the happenings in the play when we write the interpretation and when we think of the thesis statement. If you keep summarizing that particular literary piece, you won't be able to think of a thesis statement. You need a thesis statement. So in order to come up with a thesis statement, you need to think what point of view you develop about the play or the story that you read. You have already started the process of doing that by taking down the notes in the form of by pointing out the themes for yourself. Now, when you are at the second stage of writing the thesis statement, you need to think how all those themes that you identified, how they can be merged together to create one statement which could be true of the whole piece. A little challenging, yes, but that is your task as the writer of the interpretation of a particular text. So what is your position about the text or with reference to the text? That is your interpretation. If once again you recall the play that we have already read, the one-act play, we identified two themes just now, one with the help of symbol, transience of life, the other with the help of character, mother's character, which is guilt, or troubled relationship between mother and son, or maybe shame. Now, you have to merge these two themes in such a manner that you should be able to have one interpretation of the play. One possible interpretation of the play could be that the play Andrew's mother represents yes, so Aniba has this question, is this is the same case as analysis, everyone's interpretation could be different. Yes, that is true. So each one of you would have a different interpretation about the text. Now, I was on the point that you need to merge those themes in order to create one interpretation. So one possible interpretation of Andrew's mother can be that the modern play Andrew's mother, written in 1980s or something, it reflects the consequences of troubled relationships in American society. Let me rephrase it a little bit. The play Andrew's Mother, written in 1980s, represents the broken family system in American society. Now, this interpretation that I have just created for you as an example, it is claiming that the play represents the broken family system in American society. It can accommodate both of the themes that we just highlighted. The first theme, transience of life. Transience of life or transitoriness of life is a constant obsession with a lot of modern societies. Why? Because in the pre-modern societies, so to say, death is in fact, death is a transition into a different phase of life. That is not end of life. It is just change of phase. This is a kind of pre-modern notion of what death is. Death is like you just move from one world to the other world. And in fact, the other world, the second world, the eternal world is a better place than this world. So this is a kind of pre-modern notion. Or let me also say in more simple words, it is a religious notion of life. And the pre-modern people or pre-modernists, they hold on to that belief. Therefore, death does not bring much grief to them because they always expect this transition from one phase of life to another phase of life. But the modern societies, I'm using the word modern in my statement, in my thesis statement, the modern societies, they do not hold that kind of metaphysical notion of life and death. For them, the end of life is end of everything. It's a kind of materialist notion of life, right? And materialist notion of death, right? So when we say that broken modern representation of broken family system in American, so therefore, because of the absence of belief in death, it's not possible for people to continue to maintain those relationships which we call sacred relationships. They do not continue to hold on them. And therefore, those problems in relationships, they appear in the form of guilt between parents and children, or between other individuals in any given society. So your thesis statement, therefore, it tries to capture all the themes that you identified in a particular text. You might have more than two themes. For example, I use just two themes, but you can have more than two themes as well. But you merge all those themes to come up with a thesis statement. But please take a very special note of the fact that the initial thesis statement that you come up with is not going to be the final thesis statement. You write that thesis statement down, which you were able to build, and then you move on to the third step of writing your interpretative essay. There is always room for you to return to the initial thesis statement and modify a little bit, so that there is a strong connection between the thesis statement of your essay and other parts of it.